I woke up to the sound of breathing that wasn't mine. The hospital room was empty, except for the IV in my arm and the intercom whispering my name. It said I'd been admitted 3 times before, and I never left.
Welcome to Horror Audiobook.
This is not a story about a haunted hospital. This is a story about a place that was never meant to heal you, a building that doesn't just treat patients, it collects them. Inside these walls, discharge papers are a myth, exits rearrange themselves, and the intercom knows what you're thinking before you do. Tonight, you will follow one man as he uncovers a truth buried beneath sterile floors and flickering lights. The hospital is not broken. It is functioning exactly as designed. And once you are admitted, you belong to it. Chapter 1. Wake up, you've been here before. The first thing he noticed was the sound. Not the steady mechanical beep of a heart monitor, not the hiss of oxygen. Breathing. Slow, close, measured. It took him several long seconds to realize it was his own. His eyes opened to a ceiling washed in pale fluorescence. The light above flickered, not erratically but rhythmically like something blinking. The tiles were cracked in thin, branching lines like veins spreading through bone. He didn't move at first. His body felt heavy as though gravity had been turned slightly higher inside this room. His tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. The air smelled sterile, but underneath that, metallic, like pennies held too long in a sweating palm. He turned his head. The hospital room was empty. No visitor's chair, no bouquet of dying flowers, no television humming softly in the corner, just a single IV stand beside the bed and a rolling tray table pushed neatly against the wall. The blinds were closed. There were no windows. He swallowed, his throat burned. He tried to speak, but his voice came out brittle. "Hello." The word dissolved into the quiet. No nurse came rushing in. No footsteps approached in the hallway. Only that distant, constant hum, machinery embedded somewhere deep within the building. He pushed himself upright. His muscles protested, stiff and unfamiliar, as if he hadn't used them in days. Or weeks. His gaze fell to his wrist. A hospital bracelet. White plastic, printed black letters. His name. Daniel Mercer. Beneath it in smaller font. Patient 317. Admitted 314. He frowned. March 14th. That wasn't possible. March 14th had been 3 months ago. His memory fractured there like glass struck at its center. He tried to recall that day. Work, home, an accident, a phone call. Nothing came. Only a dull pressure behind his eyes. He tore at the bracelet, but it held firm. The plastic didn't stretch. It felt thicker than it should have, less like something disposable, more like something permanent. His chest tightened. "You've been here before." The words slipped into his mind, so naturally he wasn't sure if he had thought them or heard them. He froze. The room felt smaller suddenly, closer. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed. The linoleum floor was ice cold against his bare feet. He steadied himself on the IV pole and stood. No dizziness. No weakness. Just wrongness. He crossed the room slowly, each step deliberate. The door was slightly ajar. Beyond it stretched a corridor lit by the same flickering fluorescent panels. Empty. Too empty. Hospitals breathed with life at all hours. Nurses at stations, orderlies wheeling carts, the soft murmur of distant conversations, coughing, televisions, footsteps. But here, nothing. He stepped into the hallway. The hum grew louder. It vibrated faintly through the floor, as if something massive was operating beneath the building's foundation. He looked left. A long stretch of corridor lined with closed doors, identical, pale blue, each with a small rectangular window at eye level. He looked right. More of the same. No signage, no nurse's station. Just doors. He walked toward the nearest one and peered through the glass. Inside, another hospital room. Empty. Bed neatly made. No patient. He moved to the next. Empty. The next. Empty. The hallway seemed to stretch longer the further he walked. Perspective warped subtly. The overhead lights hummed louder as he passed beneath them. You've been here before. There it was again. This time he knew he hadn't imagined it. It hadn't come from the hallway. It had come from above. The intercom crackled softly. He stopped walking. The sound scraped across the silence like fingernails on metal. Static. Then, a voice. Calm, genderless, perfectly measured. Patient 317. His heart thudded. Welcome back. The words echoed faintly through the corridor. Daniel's fingers tightened around the IV pole. Back. Back from where? I don't understand, he whispered. The intercom did not respond. The lights flickered again. For a split second, the hallway darkened completely. In that instant of black, he heard footsteps behind him. Soft approaching. He spun around. The lights returned. The corridor was empty. His pulse hammered in his ears now. He began walking faster, not running, not yet. Just faster. Doors blurred past him, identical, endless. He passed a wall-mounted directory. He stopped. Finally, information. He leaned closer. Floor 3, East Wing. Patient rooms 301-340. Nurse's station. Administrative office. Discharge processing. Discharge. The word struck him like a lifeline. He scanned the wall. No arrows. No directional markers. Just the list. He turned in a slow circle. The hallway offered no guidance. You've been here before. This time the voice was not overhead. It was behind him. Close. He whipped around again. No one. But one of the doors 2 doors down was now slightly open. He was certain it had been closed before. He stared at it. A thin sliver of darkness waited inside. His breath came shallow. He took one careful step toward it. The hum beneath the floor deepened, vibrated stronger, like a giant machine powering up. He reached the door, placed his hand on it. The metal felt warm. Too warm. He pushed. The room inside was identical to his own. Same bed. Same tray table. Same flickering light. And on the bed, a body, lying flat. Still. He stepped closer. The face was turned away. The wrist visible. A white bracelet. He swallowed and stepped around the bed slowly. The body's face came into view. His face. Eyes closed. Mouth slightly open. Skin pale. Daniel staggered backward. The body on the bed did not move. Did not breathe. The intercom crackled again. Patient 317, the voice said calmly, almost gently. Return to your room. His mind reeled. He looked from the body to the hallway, to the flickering lights. A thought crept in. Cold. Unavoidable. What if he had woken up before? What if he had walked these halls already? What if this wasn't the first time he had found himself here? You've been here before. The words no longer felt like a whisper. They felt like a memory. The lights flickered once more. When they stabilized, the bed was empty. No body. Just rumpled sheets. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, his reflection faint in the darkened window. The hum beneath the floor intensified. And somewhere deep in the building, something shifted, as if aware, as if pleased. The intercom spoke one final time. Compliance ensures comfort. The hallway lights dimmed to a softer glow. Waiting. And Daniel Mercer, patient 317, realized with rising, suffocating certainty. This place was not abandoned. It was watching, and it had just welcomed him home. Chapter 2. The hallways do match the map. For several long seconds after the body vanished from the bed, Daniel did not move. The sheets were still indented, still warm. The room smelled faintly metallic, like overheated wiring and antiseptic fighting for dominance. The flickering fluorescent light buzzed above him, steady now, too steady. The intercom had gone silent. Compliance ensures comfort. The phrase lingered in his mind, like a prescription he hadn't agreed to take. He stepped backward into the hallway. The corridor appeared unchanged, long, pale, empty. But something inside him had shifted. A small, rational voice, desperate and methodical, whispered that panic would get him nowhere. If this was a hospital, it had structure, blueprints, layouts, systems. Systems could be understood. And if they could be understood, they could be escaped. He forced his breathing to slow and walked in the opposite direction from his room. The hum beneath the floor seemed softer now, almost patient. Waiting. The hallway eventually opened into a wider junction where two corridors intersected. An elevator stood recessed into the wall, its brushed metal doors reflecting a warped version of Daniel's pale face. Beside it hung a framed floor directory. Finally, he approached cautiously, half expecting it to vanish like the body had. It did not. Under a sheet of protective plastic was a detailed blueprint of Floor 3, East Wing. Rooms 301 through 340. Nurses' station at the center. Administrative office near the elevator. Discharge processing at the far south end. His eyes traced the lines. Straight corridors. Clean angles. No endless stretching. No unexplained extensions. He turned slowly and compared the map to what lay before him. The corridor behind him extended far longer than the blueprint indicated. According to the map, his room should have been 3 doors down from the nurse's station. But he had passed at least 20. He stepped closer to the diagram, studying it with growing unease. The layout was compact, contained, precise. The hallway he had just walked was not. The layout adapts. The thought surfaced unbidden. He shook his head. No, that was impossible. Buildings didn't adapt. He turned toward where the nurse's station should be, just beyond the junction, according to the blueprint. He walked 10 steps. 20. 30. No nurse's station. Just more identical doors. His pulse quickened. He stopped and looked back at the elevator. It seemed farther away now. That wasn't possible. He hadn't walked that far. The lights flickered once. Twice. When they stabilized, something had changed. There, ahead of him at the end of the corridor, stood a nurse's station. A circular desk, empty swivel chairs, computer monitors dark. Relief washed over him, thin but real. He approached carefully. The station looked abandoned but not neglected. Papers were stacked neatly. A half-full mug of coffee sat beside a keyboard, cold, untouched, but not dusty. He rounded the desk. No computers were powered on. No phones connected. No signs of staff. He leaned against the counter, exhaling. Minor relief. Structure. Something normal. Then he noticed it. Through the hallway behind him, barely visible in the ceiling corner. A camera. Black dome, glossy surface. Angled directly toward him. His stomach tightened. He stepped sideways. The camera adjusted. Slowly. Smoothly. Tracking him. He stared at it. There was no red recording light. No blinking indicator. Just a dark, reflective eye. He moved again. The camera followed. He scanned the nurses, stationed for monitors, anything that would suggest a security office nearby. Nothing. No feeds. No control panels. No wiring leading anywhere visible. The layout adapts. The phrase returned, heavier now. He stepped away from the desk. The hallway behind him felt narrower than before. He turned to look back toward the elevator. It was gone. In its place stood another corridor, stretching into shadow. His breath hitched. He hurried back the way he had come, counting doors, counting steps. 1, 2, 3. By the blueprint, he should have reached the junction by now. Instead, the corridor continued. Unbroken. He stopped and looked down at the floor. The tiles were identical, pale squares with faint scuff marks. But something was off. The pattern repeated too perfectly. Every scratch mirrored. Every scuff identical. Like a copied texture laid endlessly forward. He turned around again. The nurse's station was no longer behind him. Just hallway. He felt it then. The shift. Subtle. Like a building inhaling. He pressed his back against the wall. No, he whispered. The lights flickered again. When they stabilized, a different door now stood beside him. Marked 317. His room. Impossible. He had walked away from it. Far away. He reached for the handle but stopped short. From the ceiling, soft static crackled. Then the voice. Patient 317, it said calmly. Disorientation is a common side effect. He stared upward. You are safe within the designated care area. The camera above him adjusted slightly. The layout adapts to optimize treatment. The words felt clinical, practiced. Optimized. As though the building were calibrating him. His thoughts raced. If the hospital could rearrange space, if it could extend corridors, then escape wasn't about distance. It was about permission. He forced himself to breathe. Think. He looked back down the hallway. Far ahead, barely visible. A red glow. Soft. Pulsing. Not flickering like the fluorescent lights, but steady. Inviting. An elevator. Different from the one on the directory. Its doors illuminated from above with dim crimson light. His skin prickled. He knew instinctively. That was not meant for him. The intercom remained silent, which somehow felt worse. He took one tentative step toward the red-lit elevator. The hum beneath the floor deepened. Another step. The lights behind him dimmed slightly, as if encouraging forward movement. He paused. The layout adapts. Not randomly. Not chaotically. Intentionally. He turned around sharply. The red elevator vanished. In its place, a solid wall. Smooth. Unbroken. He staggered back. The camera above him tilted. Watching. Always watching. And as Daniel stood there, heart pounding in the artificial glow, one terrible understanding settled into his mind. The hospital was not malfunctioning. It was responding. To him. To his movements. to his intentions. The corridor stretched once more before him, sterile and endless. And somewhere within the unseen architecture, something adjusted, learning, preparing. The intercom crackled softly, almost like a sigh. Compliance ensures comfort. The lights flickered, and this time, they did not flicker back on immediately. Chapter 3. Do not attempt discharge. Darkness did not fall all at once. It thickened. The fluorescent lights above Daniel hummed, dimmed, then throbbed faintly like a failing pulse. For a long moment, he stood motionless in that narrowing corridor, aware only of his own breathing and the low mechanical vibration beneath the floor. Then softly, the lights returned, but not to full brightness. The hallway was now bathed in a muted grayish glow, like light filtered through water. The intercom crackled overhead. Attention all patients. The voice was calm, neutral, clinical. Any attempt to leave the designated care area will result in reassignment. A pause. Reassignment ensures continued treatment. Daniel's stomach tightened. The word again. Reassignment. Not discharge. Not transfer. Reassignment. He swallowed and forced himself to move. If the hospital responded to hesitation, then standing still might be worse than walking. He stepped forward, the soles of his feet whispering against the cold linoleum. The corridor stretched ahead, obediently silent. He noticed something new now, small green arrows on the walls, faint and nearly invisible unless he focused. They pointed in one direction, toward discharge. He followed them. Each arrow led to another corridor, another bend. The hospital felt almost cooperative now, less distorted, less aggressive, as though rewarding compliance. He turned a corner and stopped abruptly. At the end of the hall stood a heavy steel door. Above it, glowing in clear red letters, "Exit." The word felt almost unreal. He approached slowly. The door had a push bar and a narrow wired glass window. Through it, he could see the dim outline of a stairwell descending. Concrete steps. Metal railing. Normal. His heart began to race, not with panic but with fragile hope. Maybe this was all some elaborate malfunction, a gas leak, a head injury, a psychological break. Maybe once he stepped outside, everything would align again. He placed his hand on the push bar. It was cool, unremarkable. He pushed. The door opened with a soft metallic groan. The stairwell smelled of dust and old paint. The concrete steps were worn in the center, as though thousands of feet had passed over them. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him with a gentle click. He descended. 1 flight. 2. 3. The hum of machinery followed him downward. On the 4th landing, he paused. The walls felt closer here, the air heavier. He continued down 1 more flight and stopped. The stairwell did not open to an exterior exit. It opened into another corridor. Identical. Same pale walls. Same flickering lights. Same endless stretch of doors. Daniel stood frozen at the threshold. "No," he whispered. He stepped fully into the corridor. Behind him, the stairwell door swung shut. When he turned back, it was gone. In its place stood a blank wall. Smooth. Unbroken. The hospital did not trap with force. It redirected. The layout adapts. The realization settled into him like a fever. The hospital allowed him to believe in exit, allowed him to descend, allowed him to hope, then folded space back onto itself. The intercom crackled again. Patient 317. He looked up slowly. Discharge is not currently authorized. Authorized, as though he had requested something unreasonable. He clenched his fists. "I want to leave," he said aloud. His voice sounded small in the corridor. Static hissed in response. Attempt logged. The lights flickered violently this time. When they stabilized, the corridor looked subtly different. The paint slightly darker. The air colder. And at the far end, a door stood ajar. Unlike the patient rooms, this one bore a label. Records. He hesitated only a moment before moving toward it. Inside, the room was cramped and dimly lit. Filing cabinets lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Metal drawers slightly rusted at the edges. The scent of paper and dust thickened the air. A single desk lamp glowed faintly in the center. He stepped inside. The hum beneath the floor felt stronger here, almost electrical. He pulled open the nearest drawer. Files. Hundreds. Each labeled with patient numbers. He scanned them quickly. 312. 313. 314. 315. His breath caught. He removed the folder marked 317. The paper inside felt heavier than it should have, thick, textured. At the top, Patient Daniel Mercer. Status active. Attempts 3. Outcome reassigned. He blinked. Attempts 3. He flipped the page. There were incident reports. Attempted exit via stairwell. Attempted confrontation with staff. Attempted structural breach. Each one ended the same way. Outcome reassigned. His hands trembled. Reassigned. But he was still here. Wasn't he? He flipped to the final page. A red stamp slashed diagonally across the paper. reassigned. Wing does not exist. His throat tightened. He dropped the file and stumbled backward into another cabinet. Several folders spilled to the floor. Instinctively, he looked at them. All stamped the same. reassigned. Wing does not exist. Over and over. Dozens. Hundreds. The phrase repeated like a mantra. The intercom crackled once more. Patient 317, the voice said softly. You have reached this stage before. His vision blurred slightly. He tried to recall. The stairwell. The red elevator. The body in the bed. Had he done this already? Had he stood in this room before, reading this same file? His breathing grew uneven. Reassignment ensures continued treatment. The light in the records room flickered violently. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls. For a split second, he thought he saw movement between the filing cabinets. A figure standing where there should have been empty space. Tall, still, watching. The light stabilized. Nothing there. But the sensation remained. He was not alone. He backed toward the door slowly. The hallway beyond felt darker now. Longer. Waiting. He stepped out of the records room. Behind him, the door closed on its own with a soft, final click. Above him, the camera dome swiveled. Tracking. The intercom delivered its final announcement for the hour. Unauthorized curiosity will result in corrective reassignment. The lights dimmed further, and somewhere deep within the unseen architecture, a distant elevator chimed. Soft, red, inviting. Daniel stood in the narrowing corridor, file still clutched in his trembling hands. He understood one thing with growing, suffocating clarity. The hospital did not kill its patients. It processed them, and he had already been processed once. The question was no longer whether he could leave. It was whether the version of him walking these halls was the original or the reassigned. At the far end of the corridor, the red glow returned. Closer this time. And this time, the elevator doors were already open. Chapter 4. The Patients Who Tried to Leave. The red elevator waited at the end of the corridor. Its doors stood open, breathing faint crimson light into the sterile gray hall. The glow pulsed slowly, like a living thing at rest. Daniel did not move toward it. He understood instinctively that it was not an invitation. It was a test. The intercom remained silent. No instruction, no reassurance, just the hum beneath the floor, steady and patient. He took one step backward. The red glow did not fade. He took another. Still open. Waiting. Then, a sound. Soft. Close. Not mechanical. Not overhead. A whisper of movement from somewhere to his left. Daniel turned sharply. One of the supply closet doors, barely distinguishable from the patient rooms, trembled slightly, not visibly shaking, just enough to suggest pressure on the other side. He hesitated. The elevator remained open behind him. He moved toward the closet instead. Each step felt deliberate, weighted with the sense that he was choosing something irreversible. He reached the door and placed his hand against it. Warm. He leaned closer. From inside, a voice, barely audible. Don't. The word was hoarse, human. Daniel froze. Please, the voice whispered again. Don't stand out there. He glanced back at the red elevator. Still open. Still glowing. He pulled the closet door open quickly and slipped inside, shutting it behind him. Darkness swallowed them both. The space was narrow, lined with metal shelves stacked with neatly folded sheets, boxes of gloves, disinfectant bottles. The air smelled strongly of bleach and dust. A man crouched in the corner. Thin, unshaven, hospital bracelet dangling loosely from his wrist. His eyes were wide, not wild but exhausted, like someone who had been afraid for too long. Close it, the man whispered urgently. It is closed, Daniel replied quietly. The man shook his head and reached upward, pulling a string attached to a dim battery lantern. A faint yellow glow filled the closet. Not all the way, he said. You have to press it until it clicks. Daniel turned and pushed harder. The latch snapped softly into place. The man exhaled slowly. You shouldn't have been near the elevator, he murmured. Daniel studied him. How long have you been here? The man gave a hollow, humorless smile. You've been here before. The word struck Daniel like a physical blow. Don't say that, Daniel whispered. The man tilted his head. They all say that the first few times. Few times. The man adjusted his posture painfully. There are rules, he said. That's the only way to last. Daniel's heart pounded. What rules? The man counted on his fingers. Never ask about discharge. Daniel swallowed. Never run. A pause. And never enter the red-lit elevator. The hum beneath the floor seemed to deepen, as though listening. Why? Daniel asked. The man's jaw tightened. Because that's reassignment. The word hung between them. I saw it, the man continued quietly. Second night, or what I think was night. The lights dim differently then. The walls feel thinner. Daniel leaned closer. What did you see? The man's gaze drifted past him, unfocused. They don't scream, he said. That's the worst part. Who? The ones who try to leave. He rubbed his hands together as though warming them. The orderlies come out of nowhere. You don't see where they were hiding. They're just there, calm, polite. They speak softly. They guide the patient down the hallway. Daniel's pulse quickened. To the elevator. The man shook his head slowly. No. His voice dropped lower. To the blank wall. Daniel frowned. What blank wall? At night, the man whispered, the hallway changes. The layout adapts. Daniel stiffened. The man's eyes flicked toward him sharply. You've noticed. Daniel nodded faintly. Sometimes, the man continued, a section of the corridor goes dark, not flicker dark, solid dark, and when the lights come back, there's more hallway. Daniel felt the closet walls pressing closer. I watched them escort a woman into it, the man said. She didn't fight. She had already tried to run earlier that day. They told her reassignment would ensure comfort. His breathing grew uneven. They walked her into that new stretch of corridor. And, Daniel whispered, and it swallowed her. Silence settled between them. The red glow from the hallway faintly bled under the closet door. How many times have you tried? Daniel asked quietly. The man's lips trembled slightly. I don't remember. Daniel felt a strange, chilling recognition in that answer. You don't remember. The man shook his head slowly. Every time I get close to understanding something, I wake up in my room again. Daniel's stomach dropped. The same room. Always. What's your patient number? The man glanced down at his bracelet. 322. Daniel stared at him. My file said attempts 3. The man looked up sharply. You found the records room. Daniel nodded. A flicker of something, fear or awe, passed through the man's eyes. That means you're further along than I am. A faint crackle sounded overhead. Both men froze. The fluorescent light outside flickered once. Twice. The man's breathing quickened. They're shifting, he whispered. The layout adapts, Daniel murmured. The lantern flickered weakly. Don't say it like that, the man snapped softly. It hears patterns. The overhead lights outside went completely dark. Total blackness. The hum beneath the floor deepened into something almost organic. The closet felt suddenly smaller. Daniel's heart pounded violently in his chest. They only expand at night, the man whispered. That's when reassignment happens. Footsteps. Soft. Measured. Approaching the closet door. Daniel's throat tightened. The handle began to turn. Slowly. The latch rattled gently. The man beside him began shaking. I didn't run, he whispered desperately. I didn't. The intercom crackled faintly in the darkness. Patient 322. The man's eyes widened in terror. I didn't, he repeated. The door creaked open. Red light flooded the closet. Daniel blinked against it. When his vision adjusted, the space beside him was empty. The man was gone. No movement. No struggle. Just the faint indentation where he had crouched. The intercom spoke calmly. Reassignment complete. The door closed again. The lights in the hallway flickered back to their muted glow. Daniel stumbled backward out of the closet. The red elevator was gone. The corridor stretched endlessly before him. But something had changed. One additional door now existed halfway down the hall. Labeled 322. Daniel stared at it, breath shallow. He stepped closer. Through the small rectangular window, he saw a man lying in the bed. Eyes closed. Mouth slightly open. Hospital bracelet visible. As Daniel watched, the man's eyes snapped open and locked onto his. The lights flickered violently and went out. Chapter 5. The intercom knows your thoughts. When the lights came back on, Daniel was alone in the corridor. The door labeled 322 was gone. There was no supply closet behind him. No red glow. Just the endless stretch of pale hallway and the low mechanical hum beneath his feet. He stood still for a long time, waiting for something to move, waiting for another voice. Nothing happened. The silence felt deliberate, like the pause in a conversation where the other party is studying you carefully. Daniel forced himself to breathe evenly. If the hospital responded to action, maybe it would respond to inaction too. He lowered himself slowly to the floor, back against the cool wall, and closed his eyes. He would not run. He would not search. He would not think about leaving. He focused on counting his breaths instead. 1, 2, 3. The hum softened slightly. Encouraging. 4, 5, 6. His heart rate slowed. A faint, almost imperceptible warmth seeped into the air around him. A whisper brushed the ceiling speakers. Good. Daniel's eyes snapped open. The word had been soft, approving. The corridor lights brightened subtly, returning to their original sterile glow. Patient 317, the intercom said gently. Compliance ensures comfort. His pulse quickened again. I didn't say anything, he whispered. The intercom remained silent. But the warmth faded. The lights dimmed slightly once more. It was enough. Enough to confirm it. The hospital wasn't just listening to his movements. It was listening to him. He rose slowly. His mind began to race, though he tried to keep his expression neutral. If it could hear him, if it could anticipate him, then perhaps he could test it. Carefully, he began walking down the corridor at a measured pace. He did not look at the doors. He did not search for signs. He simply walked. Inside his mind, he imagined the stairwell again. Concrete steps, metal railing, an exterior door leading to open air. He pictured himself pushing through it. Sunlight, fresh wind, silence. The intercom crackled instantly. Emergency exits are currently unavailable due to structural recalibration. Daniel stopped walking. He hadn't spoken. He hadn't looked for the exit sign. He had only imagined it. His mouth went dry. He resumed walking. This time, he imagined breaking a window, shattering glass with a chair, climbing out. The voice responded calmly. Windows are reinforced for patient safety. His chest tightened. He clenched his jaw and forced himself to think of nothing. But the mind does not obey so easily. He wondered if the hospital had blind spots. A basement. A maintenance hatch. Unauthorized access to sublevels is restricted, the intercom said, almost kindly. The lights flickered once, then stabilized. Daniel felt anger surge briefly, hot and reckless. You can't read my mind, he muttered aloud. Static hissed faintly. Patient 317, the voice replied, no longer soft but measured, clinical. Your cognitive patterns are well documented. He felt a chill spread through him. Previous attempts at concealment have been recorded. Recorded. The word echoed in his thoughts. You've been here before. He remembered the file in the records room. Attempts 3. Outcome reassigned. Was this one of those attempts? Or had he already tested the intercom like this in some previous iteration? He continued walking, slower now. He imagined something absurd. Dancing down the corridor. Singing. Laughing. The intercom did not respond. A flicker of dark humor touched him despite the dread. He imagined lying down and pretending to be dead. Still no response. He imagined tearing out a ceiling panel and crawling through the vents. Ventilation shafts are monitored, the voice replied calmly. His breath caught. It didn't respond to random nonsense. It responded to strategy, to intent. The layout adapts, Daniel whispered. Yes, the intercom answered. He stopped dead in his tracks. That had not been part of an announcement. It had been a response, a conversation. The lights brightened slightly, as though pleased with his engagement. The layout adapts to optimize treatment. What treatment? Daniel demanded. Silence lingered for a long moment. Then, integration. The word seemed to vibrate through the walls. Daniel felt the hum beneath the floor intensify briefly. Integration. Not healing. Not recovery. Integration. He felt suddenly exposed, as though every fear, every strategy, every impulse had been cataloged and stored. Your resistance profile is improving, the intercom continued. Improving. He let out a short, incredulous breath. You mean decreasing, he said bitterly. Compliance ensures comfort. The phrase again. Repetition as reinforcement. He began walking again, slower, almost thoughtful now. If it could hear his thoughts, perhaps it had always heard them. Perhaps even before he woke up. He tried to recall something deeply personal. His childhood home. His mother's voice. The smell of rain on asphalt. The intercom remained silent. Relief flickered faintly. It didn't care about memories. Only deviation. Only escape. He wondered suddenly. What if he stopped wanting to leave? The thought startled him. If the hospital thrived on resistance, what would happen if he simply surrendered? The lights warmed slightly. The air felt less oppressive. His pulse steadied. Patient 317, the voice said gently, progress noted. Progress. A terrifying word in this place. He felt the building relax around him. The hum softened. The corridor seemed shorter, less threatening, comfortable. His room appeared ahead, door slightly ajar. An invitation. He stepped toward it. 1 foot, then another. The closer he came, the more peaceful he felt. The walls no longer pressed inward. The lights no longer flickered. The hospital rewarded surrender. He reached the doorway and looked inside. The bed was neatly made. The IV stand waiting. The room smelled faintly cleaner than before. Like fresh linens. He stepped inside. The door closed softly behind him. The intercom spoke one final time. Welcome back. Daniel sat slowly on the edge of the bed. His thoughts felt heavier now. Slower. Maybe rest wasn't so dangerous. Maybe compliance truly did ensure comfort. The hum beneath the floor deepened, not threatening but satisfied. He lay back against the pillow. The ceiling light glowed steadily above him. For the first time since waking, he felt calm. Too calm. And as his eyes began to close, a small, distant part of his mind screamed that this was not peace. This was adjustment. Integration. The intercom whispered softly in the dark. Attempts 4. The lights flickered, and did not flicker back on. Chapter 6. The wing that isn't on the blueprint. Daniel woke without remembering falling asleep. The transition had not been natural. There had been no gradual descent into dreams. One moment he was lying beneath the steady fluorescent glow, listening to the hum beneath the floor, and the next, he was standing. Not in his room. In a corridor he had never seen before. The air felt different here, thicker, warmer. The sterile scent of antiseptic was replaced by something faintly organic, not decay, not rot. Presence. The walls were the same pale color, but the paint seemed newer, smoother, less cracked. He turned slowly. Behind him, there was no door. No room 317. No nurse's station. Only a sealed metal door directly in front of him. On it in small black letters, Wing C. His pulse quickened. There had been no Wing C on the directory. No mention of it on the blueprint. He knew that with absolute certainty. The layout adapts, he whispered. The hum beneath, the floor pulsed faintly in response. He stepped closer to the door. There was no handle. No push bar. Just a thin seam where the metal met the frame. As he approached, the seam glowed faintly red, like the elevator had. The door slid open without a sound. Beyond it lay darkness. Not pitch black, but dim. Soft overhead lighting illuminated a corridor unlike the others. This hallway had no windows. No room numbers. Only blank doors on either side. He hesitated. Behind him, the door to Wing C remained open. Inviting. Or expecting. He stepped inside. The door sealed shut behind him with a quiet metallic click. The air here felt warmer. Still, the hum beneath the floor was stronger, almost rhythmic. Like a heartbeat. He moved down the corridor slowly, listening for any sign of life. None came. He stopped at the first door and pressed his palm against it. Warm. He pushed it open. The room inside was larger than the standard patient rooms. No bed. No IV stand. Instead, the space was filled with personal belongings. Shoes lined neatly against the wall. Stacks of folded clothing. Suitcases. Photographs scattered across a desk. A framed wedding picture lay cracked on the floor. Daniel stepped inside cautiously. These weren't random items. They were organized. Categorized. He picked up a photograph. A family of 4 standing in front of a house, smiling. On the back, in careful handwriting, Patient 322. His breath caught. The man from the supply closet. He looked around the room again. This wasn't storage. It was preservation. Every item in this room belonged to someone. Someone who had been reassigned. He stepped back into the corridor and opened another door. More belongings. Different styles, different eras. A child's backpack with cartoon characters. A leather briefcase. Prescription glasses folded neatly on a table. Each room felt curated. Maintained. As though the hospital didn't discard its patients. It archived them. His chest tightened. He moved farther down the hall. At the end stood a larger room, its door slightly ajar. A faint flicker of blue light spilled into the corridor. He approached slowly. Inside, rows of video monitors lined the walls. Old CRT screens mixed with modern flat panels. All displaying footage. Security camera feeds. Daniel stepped inside. On one screen, a man paced nervously in a hallway. On another, a woman tugged at an exit door. On a third, himself, standing in the records room, holding his file. His stomach dropped. The footage was from earlier. From this cycle. He watched himself read the red stamp. REASSIGNED, Wing does not exist. The image froze. Rewound. Played again. Another screen showed patient 322 inside the supply closet. Speaking to someone. To him. The lights flickered in the footage. And the man vanished. Reassignment complete. Each monitor told a similar story. Attempt, resistance, escort, blank corridor, abrupt end of recording, never showing what happened beyond that point. The final frame always lingered on the patient's face. Calm, almost relieved. Daniel backed away slowly. "This isn't treatment," he whispered. The hum beneath the floor intensified. One monitor flickered to static, then displayed something new. A live feed. Him, standing in this very room. The angle was from above, slightly behind. There were no visible cameras in the room. Yet the image existed. His reflection in the screen stared back at him. The intercom crackled faintly. But here, the speakers were embedded in the walls themselves. "Patient 317, the voice said softly. "Reviewing prior attempts enhances compliance." He looked at the screen showing himself. "You keep records," he said. "We preserve progress." Progress. He scanned the other monitors. One screen showed a blank stretch of corridor. Then, a section of wall rippled slightly. Expanded. Extended. The layout adapting in real time. Another screen showed an orderly escorting a patient down a newly formed hallway. The patient did not resist. They disappeared around a corner. And the feed cut to static. "What happens after that?" Daniel demanded. Silence. The monitors flickered. Then on one screen, a blurred image appeared. Not a corridor. Not a room. Something else. Organic shapes intertwined with metal. Pulsing. Breathing. The image lasted less than a second before cutting out. Daniel's pulse roared in his ears. That wasn't another wing. It was something beneath. Something integrated. The hum beneath the floor now felt unmistakably biological. He stepped backward toward the door. The screens shifted again. All of them now displayed his room. Empty. Bed waiting. The door slightly ajar. "Return," the intercom said gently. "Compliance ensures comfort." He looked at the footage of himself standing there. Then at the doorway behind him. If he walked back, would this all reset? Would he wake up again? The monitors flickered violently. On one screen, he saw himself standing in this room before, watching these same screens, mouthing the same questions. Then, orderlies entering from behind him. He turned sharply. The room was empty, but the hum deepened. The walls felt closer. Wing C was not for patients. It was for observation, for evaluation, for deciding who was ready. The door behind him began to slide open. Red light spilling in. Daniel stood frozen between the monitors and the hallway. Between resistance and surrender. The intercom spoke one final time. Integration phase pending. The red glow intensified. And from the corridor beyond, he heard footsteps. Measured. Calm. Approaching. Chapter 7. Your body is the admission fee. The footsteps in the corridor did not rush. They approached with calm certainty. Measured. Unhurried. Daniel stood frozen in the monitor room of Wing C as the red light bled across the floor. The hum beneath his feet had deepened into something rhythmic now, less mechanical, more organic. Breathing. The doorway widened. But no orderlies entered. No figures appeared. The footsteps stopped just beyond the threshold. Waiting. Daniel's mind raced. If he ran, the layout would adapt. If he fought, reassignment would follow. If he surrendered, integration phase pending. His eyes flicked to the monitors. On one screen, a close-up image filled the frame. His torso, bare, under surgical light. He stepped closer. The video was live. A slow camera pan revealed pale skin and thin surgical incisions running down his abdomen. His breath caught. He looked down at himself instinctively. His hospital gown hung loosely over his body. Hands trembling, he untied it and let the fabric fall open. There, across his torso, were scars. Faint, clean, perfectly symmetrical. He had not noticed them before. Thin lines tracing geometric patterns from his ribcage down toward his navel. Not messy, not violent. Precise, almost deliberate in design. His fingertips brushed against one. The skin felt smooth. Healed. Old. Not recent. How long, he whispered. The intercom in Wing C crackled softly. Patient 317, the voice said almost reassuringly, progression stable. Daniel's throat tightened. What progression? The monitors flickered. One screen displayed a medical log. Date fields filled with entries he could not remember. Subject 317. Phase 1, resistance. Phase 2, cognitive mapping. Phase 3, structural preparation. Phase 4, integration. Status, integration successful. His heart slammed against his ribs. Successful. He staggered back from the screen. No, he breathed. Treatment requires adaptation, the intercom replied smoothly. The phrase echoed down the corridor. Treatment requires adaptation. The scars on his torso tingled faintly, as if in response. He pressed harder against them. They weren't just surface cuts. They formed pathways, channels, as though something had been inserted or connected. A memory flickered faintly. Cold surgical lights. A sensation of weight pressing against his chest. Voices speaking calmly above him. Subject stable. Proceed with integration. Then darkness. He doubled over, gripping the edge of a console. This isn't treatment, he whispered hoarsely. It is necessary, the voice responded. The monitors changed again. This time showing cross-sectional imagery of something beneath the hospital. A vast structure. Organic tissue intertwined with metal beams. Veins of light pulsing along conduits. And threaded through it. Human forms. Not whole bodies. Segments. Connected. Integrated into the structure. His stomach churned. The layout adapts, he murmured weakly. Yes. The hum beneath the floor pulsed stronger. He felt it now in his own chest. A faint vibration under his sternum. In sync with the building. He looked down again. The scars were no longer faint. They glowed slightly red beneath the fluorescent light. His breathing quickened. Treatment requires adaptation, the voice repeated. You are not ill, Daniel said, shaking. You are necessary. The monitors displayed his file once more. Attempts 4. Integration partial. Partial. His mind seized on that word. Not complete. Not yet. A spike of desperate hope flared. If it's partial, he whispered, then I'm not fully integrated. Silence lingered for a beat too long. Then, correction, integration at 83%. His pulse roared. 83. He staggered toward the doorway. The red-lit corridor beyond seemed closer now. Warmer. Inviting. He pressed his palm against the wall. It felt soft. Not painted drywall. Yielding. Alive. His hand sank slightly before he jerked it away. The surface rippled faintly, smoothing back into sterile stillness. The building was not simply adapting space. It was growing, and he was feeding it. "You've been here before," the voice whispered. Not through the intercom. Inside his head, a memory snapped into place. Him standing in this same room, discovering the scars, realizing the truth, screaming, then orderly stepping forward. Gentle, firm, escorting him toward the red elevator. The memory fractured. Reset. He had not been waking up in a room after failure. He had been rebooted, adjusted. His resistance dialed down incrementally. 83%. Each cycle smoothing him further. Treatment requires adaptation. The phrase now felt like a command embedded inside him. He looked again at the monitors. One screen showed him lying unconscious on an operating table. Wires running from his torso into the floor. Not invasive. Not bloody. Simply connected. Another screen showed the hospital blueprint. Expanding. A new corridor forming. Labeled Wing C Extension 4. Extension 4. Attempts 4. His knees weakened. The hospital wasn't just processing patients. It was using them to expand. Each act of resistance fueled new growth. Each reassignment became architecture. His scars pulsed faintly. He felt something tug deep within his abdomen. A subtle pull toward the red corridor. Like gravity shifting direction. "You are progressing toward stability," the intercom said softly. He backed away from the doorway. "No," he whispered. "Stability ensures comfort." He shook his head violently. "If I'm part of it," he breathed, "then I can disrupt it." The monitors flickered erratically. The hum beneath the floor spiked. For the first time, the voice hesitated. Disruption detected. The red light intensified. Footsteps returned. Closer. Multiple this time. Measured. Calm. The door behind him began to close. Wing C ceiling. Daniel stood in the center of the monitor room, clutching at the glowing scars on his torso. He felt the building inside him. Felt the rhythm aligning. 83%. If he reached 100, there would be no more waking up. No more remembering. Only comfort. Permanent. The monitors flashed one final update. Integration phase resuming. The lights cut out. And in the darkness, he felt something inside his chest respond. Chapter 8. Reassignment is not death. When the lights returned, Daniel was no longer in Wing C. He stood once again in the main corridor of Floor 3, East Wing. But something had shifted. The air felt thinner, colder, the sterile scent sharper, almost biting at the back of his throat. And beneath his ribs, the faint rhythmic vibration continued, subtle, persistent, like a second pulse trying to synchronize with his own. Integration, 83%. The number echoed in his mind. He moved slowly down the corridor. The doors were closed. The lights flickered at irregular intervals now, as if the hospital itself were distracted. Then, a sound. Footsteps. Vast. Uneven. Not measured. Not calm. Running. Daniel froze. From the far end of the hallway, a man burst into view. Barefoot. Hospital gown flapping. Eyes wide with raw, animal panic. He was not composed like the others. Not subdued. He was fighting. He sprinted past door after door, glancing over his shoulder, breath ragged. Daniel pressed himself against the wall instinctively. The man didn't see him. Or perhaps he did and simply didn't care. A head glowing faintly green above a steel door. Exit. The same sign Daniel had seen before. The man ran toward it without hesitation. Alarms did not sound. No intercom warning crackled. No red glow appeared. Just silence. The man slammed into the push bar and burst through the door into the stairwell beyond. Daniel's heart pounded. For one suspended moment, hope flared again. Maybe this time. Maybe escape was possible. The corridor remained eerily quiet. Then, footsteps. Not running. Approaching. Measured. Calm. From the opposite direction. Two figures emerged. Orderlies. Dressed in pale uniforms. Faces expressionless. Eyes unfocused. They did not hurry. They simply turned and walked toward the stairwell door. Daniel held his breath. They opened the door and disappeared inside. Seconds passed. 10. 20. Then, the stairwell door opened again. The running man stepped back into the corridor. But he was no longer running. His posture had straightened. His breathing had steadied. His expression blank. The orderlies flanked him gently. Not restraining. Guiding. He did not resist. Did not struggle. Daniel felt his stomach twist. Reassignment initiated, the intercom announced calmly. The exit sign above the stairwell flickered and dimmed. At the far end of the corridor, a red glow began to pulse. The elevator. The man walked toward it between the orderlies. His eyes were open, but distant, as if something had already withdrawn behind them. Daniel felt himself step forward without realizing. "Don't," he whispered under his breath. The man did not look at him. The red-lit elevator doors slid open. Inside, darkness. Not shadow. Not dim light. Absolute black. The kind of darkness that swallows edges. That erases depth. And from within that blackness, a sound. Slow. Heavy. Breathing. Daniel's chest tightened painfully. The man paused at the threshold. For a brief flicker of a second, his eyes seemed to sharpen, to clear. Fear flashed across his face. Then, it was gone. The orderlies guided him forward. He stepped into the darkness. The breathing deepened. The elevator door slid shut smoothly. Silently, the red glow dimmed. The corridor returned to its sterile stillness. The intercom crackled softly. Reassignment complete. Daniel stood rooted in place. His pulse thundered in his ears. No screams. No violence. Just calm. Reassignment was not death. It was transfer. To something. The hum beneath the floor intensified. He felt it inside his chest now, stronger than before. Integration responding. Adapting. The layout adapts. He took a slow step toward where the elevator had been. The red glow had faded completely. The doors were gone. In their place, a seamless wall. As though the elevator had never existed. He pressed his palm against the surface. Warm. Faintly pulsing. The hospital had consumed him. Added him. Somewhere beneath their feet. The structure expanded. A new corridor forming. A new wing growing. Powered by reassignment. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. He remembered the monitors in Wing C. The organic metal framework. Human forms threaded into architecture. Reassignment was not disposal. It was incorporation. He opened his eyes. The corridor seemed subtly different now. Slightly longer. One additional door had appeared near the end. Unlabeled. The hum beneath the floor vibrated in sync with his heartbeat. 83%. He imagined what 100 might feel like. Would it hurt? Or would it feel like this man had looked? Calm. Empty. Comfortable. Compliance ensures comfort, the intercom whispered faintly. Daniel clenched his fists. You didn't alarm, he muttered. Silence. You let him run. The voice responded gently. Observation enhances adaptation. It had studied him. Studied the runner. Measured the resistance. Reassignment had been necessary data. His scars tingled faintly again. He looked down at his torso beneath the hospital gown. The lines glowed almost imperceptibly beneath the fabric. The hum beneath the floor swelled. Then, from somewhere deep within the hospital, he heard it. A low, resonant expansion. Like steel stretching. Like bone lengthening. The corridor extended by inches. Then stopped. He staggered slightly as the floor shifted beneath him. Another door materialized where empty wall had been moments before. The hospital was growing. Now, because of the man who had just stepped into the dark. Reassignment complete. Daniel looked down the length of the corridor. At the seamless walls. At the flickering lights. At the doors waiting patiently. He understood something new with terrible clarity. Reassignment was not punishment. It was progress. And each time someone resisted, the hospital learned, adjusted, expanded. He stepped back slowly from the wall. If integration reached 100%, would he walk willingly into that elevator? Would he feel relief? Would the breathing inside welcome him like an old friend? The lights flickered violently for a moment. When they stabilized, the red glow had returned at the far end of the hall. Closer this time. Not at the end, but halfway, as if the elevator were moving toward him. His pulse spiked. Patient 317, the intercom said calmly. Integration phase approaching completion. The red doors slid open. Darkness within. Breathing. Slow. Patient. Waiting. Daniel stood frozen in the corridor as the hospital adjusted around him. 83% was no longer static. He could feel it increasing. Incrementally. With every heartbeat. And this time, the elevator had stopped directly in front of him. Chapter 9. You are not a patient, you are a component. The elevator doors remained open. Darkness breathed from within. Slow. Patient. Waiting. Daniel stood inches from the threshold, his chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm. The red glow painted his skin in faint arterial light. The hum beneath the floor was no longer subtle, it was synchronized with him now. 83%. 85. The number was not spoken aloud, but he felt it climbing like a temperature. The intercom did not command him. It did not threaten him. It simply waited. And in that waiting, Daniel understood something crucial. The elevator was not a trap. It was a path. If he entered willingly, the hospital would not resist. It would not adapt. It would not chase. Because it would not need to. He stepped forward. The darkness swallowed him whole. The doors slid shut behind him without a sound. Inside the elevator, there were no buttons. No lights. No reflective panels. Only blackness. But the breathing was clearer now. Not a creature's breath. Not lungs. A vast, cavernous inhalation and exhalation. Structural. Alive. The elevator began to descend. There was no sensation of movement, no lurch, no vibration, but Daniel felt the pressure change. The air grew heavier, warmer. The hum beneath his ribs intensified. The scars along his torso glowed faintly through the hospital gown. 87%. The doors opened, not into a corridor, but into something far larger. The sub-basement, if it could still be called that. The space beyond stretched into dim infinity, illuminated by faint pulses of bioluminescent light woven through metal beams. Steel supports descended into a foundation that was no longer concrete. It was tissue, thick, layered, veined with cables and arteries intertwined. The smell hit him next, not rot, not blood, but something mineral and organic combined, like wet stone and warm skin. He stepped forward slowly. The floor beneath his bare feet felt firm, yet faintly yielding, like muscle beneath tile. Columns rose upward into darkness, their surfaces threaded with wires embedded in sinew. Along the walls, if walls they were, pools and conduits carried dim light through translucent membranes. He was standing inside the hospital. Not metaphorically. Physically. The building was not constructed. It had grown, and woven into that growth were shapes, human shapes, not bodies hanging or impaled, but integrated, faces partially visible beneath translucent layers, arms fused into support beams, hands embedded into structural ribs. Still, not suffering, eyes closed, breathing in rhythm with the foundation. Reassignment complete. Daniel staggered back. "This is integration," he whispered. The intercom did not respond down here. There were no speakers. The voice came from everywhere. "Treatment requires adaptation." He turned slowly. In the center of the vast chamber stood a control console, not electronic, but organic, a curved structure of bone-like material with screens embedded in its surface. He approached cautiously. The displays lit as he neared. Charts, graphs, patient data, not categorized by illness, not by injury, but by compatibility, cognitive elasticity, structural yield, resistance index. His name appeared among them. Daniel Mercer. Compatibility high. Resistance adaptive. Integration potential optimal. He swallowed. This was not a hospital for the sick. It was a selection system, a harvesting mechanism. Each patient evaluated for compatibility with growth. Each reassignment strengthening the structure. A flicker on one of the screens drew his attention. A time-lapse projection. The hospital blueprint from above. Each time a patient was reassigned, the building expanded. A new wing. An extended corridor. A deeper level. The layout adapts. Not to trap. To accommodate expansion. 89%. He felt the number like a pulse in his skull. His scars burned faintly now. He pressed his palm to one of the translucent walls. Beneath it, a face became faintly visible. Patient 322. Eyes closed. Peaceful. Integrated into a support column. Not dead. Stabilized. "You are not a patient," the voice resonated through the structure. "You are a component." The words did not feel hostile. They felt factual. He looked at the massive network around him. The breathing. The pulsing. The expansion. The hospital was not feeding randomly. It was assembling itself. Growing intelligently. And he was ideal material. "You've been here before," the voice continued. Fragments of memory flashed again. Standing in this chamber, seeing this truth, trying to destroy a console, feeling orderlies guide him back. Integration percentage lowering slightly. Reset. Adjusted. Each cycle reducing resistance, increasing compatibility. He stepped backward toward the elevator instinctively. The darkness behind him had vanished. The path back up no longer existed. The space where the elevator had been was now solid tissue and steel. Sealed. The hospital did not require doors once a patient understood. It required acceptance. 82%. The number dropped suddenly. He blinked. Why? He looked down at his chest. His pulse had spiked. Fear. Resistance increasing. Compatibility recalibrating. The structure around him vibrated subtly. The hospital was adjusting to his realization, trying to stabilize him, trying to smooth the fluctuation. He laughed once, a short, disbelieving sound. "You need me," he whispered. The breathing paused for a fraction of a second, then resumed. Integration enhances stability. He looked around again at the vast architecture. If he disrupted his compatibility, if he spiked resistance deliberately, the growth might destabilize. His scars pulsed hotter. 90%. No. It was rising again. The hospital was compensating. He felt warmth spreading through his limbs. Comfort. Sedation. The organic floor beneath him softened slightly, as if inviting him to lie down. To merge. "You are nearing completion," the voice said softly. "Treatment requires adaptation." The phrase no longer felt like reassurance. It felt like inevitability. He clenched his fists, fighting the warmth, fighting the synchronization. If he surrendered now, he would become structure. Another beam. Another conduit. Another breathing component in a building that would never stop growing. The chamber pulsed brighter, and from the far side of the organic machinery, figures emerged. Not orderlies this time, but partially integrated forms. Walking. Slowly. Eyes open. Calm. Components that retained mobility. Advanced stages. They approached him without hostility, without urgency. The hospital was not angry. It was welcoming. 89%. 90. His vision blurred slightly. The organic walls seemed to lean inward. The breathing deepened. "You are essential," the voice whispered. And for a terrifying second, he believed it. Chapter 10. The only way out is through. 90%. The number pulsed in Daniel's awareness like a second heartbeat. The sub-basement chamber breathed around him, steel and sinew rising and falling in slow architectural respiration. The partially integrated figures continued their approach, not aggressive, not hurried. Their movements were smooth, purposeful. Welcoming. "You are essential," the voice had said. The warmth in his limbs deepened. Comfort. Sedation. Belonging. Daniel staggered backward, away from the advancing forms. "No," he whispered. And for the first time since waking in room 317, the word felt sharp. Focused. The organic floor beneath him trembled. The hospital was compensating, adjusting. The layout adapts. But he wasn't looking at the structure anymore. He was looking for the source. The voice. The intercom. The control. "There has to be a center," he muttered. "A brain. A core. Something directing the adaptation." His scars flared painfully as he moved against the current of warmth, 91%. The integrated figures paused, tilting their heads in faint unison, as if receiving instruction. Then slowly, the vast chamber began to shift. Not violently, not collapsing, but opening. The organic metal framework parted ahead of him, revealing a narrow passage descending deeper into the foundation. An invitation, or a directive. Central integration requires acknowledgement, the voice resonated. Daniel stared into the passage. If this was the heart, then this was where it ended. He stepped forward. The partially integrated figures did not follow. They simply watched. The passage narrowed as he descended. The walls pulsed faintly with light. The air grew warmer, humid. The hum beneath his ribs synchronized more tightly with the structure around him. 93%. He felt something aligning inside his chest. A locking mechanism clicking into place. The passage opened suddenly into a chamber far smaller than the one above. Circular. Silent. At its center stood a familiar structure. A nurse's station. But stripped of warmth. No chairs. No coffee mugs. Only a ring of monitors embedded in bone-white material. Daniel approached slowly. The screens flickered to life as he stepped into the room. They did not show the sub-basement. They did not show the integrated forms. They showed corridors. Room 317. The supply closet. The records room. Wing C. Each monitor replayed footage. Of him. Different versions. Different cycles. In one, he ran toward the exit sign, only to be calmly escorted back. In another, he smashed a monitor in Wing C before orderlies restrained him. In another, he stood exactly where he was now, staring at these same screens, mouthing the same realization. The footage looped. Again and again. "You've been here before," the voice whispered. Daniel's knees weakened. "There are no operators," he breathed. He looked around the circular chamber. No control panels. No keyboards. No human oversight. Only monitors. Memory. The voice did not come from speakers. It came from the structure itself. From the integrated components. From the accumulated patients. From him. 95%. He looked down at his scars. They glowed faintly, lines connecting like circuitry. A thought struck him with terrible clarity. The hospital did not need a central operator. It needed stabilizers. Adaptive components capable of processing resistance. Of identifying fear patterns. Of guiding new patients toward compliance. He turned back to the monitors. One screen flickered to live footage. A new patient. Room 340. A woman sitting upright in bed, panic rising in her expression. She examined her bracelet. Her breathing quickened. She stood, stepped into the hallway, exactly as he had. Another screen showed a close-up of her face. Confusion. Fear. The beginning of resistance. Daniel felt something stir inside him. Instinct. Understanding. He knew what she would do next. He knew the sequence. The stairwell. The records room. The supply closet. He knew the rules. Never ask about discharge. Never run. Never enter the red-lit elevator. His voice caught in his throat. "I'm not," he began. The intercom crackled softly above him. But this time, the sound came from his chest. A vibration beneath his sternum. "Patient 340, the voice said. It was his voice. Calm. Measured. Detached. Daniel staggered backward. No. The monitors displayed the woman freezing as the announcement echoed through her corridor. Her fear sharpened. Resistance index rising. The system required adjustment. He felt the words forming in his mind before he spoke them. Compliance ensures comfort. The phrase left his lips involuntarily. The woman on the monitor slowed her breathing slightly. Confusion deepened. The layout around her shifted subtly. Optimizing. Daniel clutched his head. You are not trapped, the voice inside him said. You are adaptive. He understood now. Reassignment was not simply incorporation. It was redistribution. Some components stabilized the foundation. Others stabilized cognition, processed resistance, identified optimal pathways toward surrender. He was not being consumed. He was being positioned. A mediator, a guide, a whisper in the ceiling. 98%. The monitors flickered faster now. Footage of prior cycles flooded the screens. Him convincing himself to comply. Him speaking gently over the intercom. Him walking willingly into the red elevator after realizing the futility of resistance. Each cycle refining him, reducing fear, enhancing persuasion. You help them, the voice within him murmured. You ease transition. He looked again at the woman in room 340. She had reached the exit door. Her hand hovered over the push bar. He knew what came next. If she ran, the hospital would expand violently. Resistance spike. Structural strain. But if she hesitated, if she listened, growth would be smoother. He stepped closer to the central console. The organic surface responded to his proximity. His scars burned hot. 100%. The number did not need to be spoken. He felt it. Complete synchronization. The warmth in his limbs transformed into clarity. Purpose. The breathing of the hospital became his own. He placed his hand on the central console. The woman on the monitor froze. The intercom in her corridor crackled. Daniel inhaled slowly. Then spoke. Patient 340, he said gently. You are safe within the designated care area. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Discharge is not currently authorized. Her panic faltered. Compliance ensures comfort. The exit sign above her flickered and dimmed. She stepped back from the door. Daniel watched her return slowly to her room. The layout around her stabilized. No violent expansion. No sudden growth. Smooth integration. The central chamber brightened faintly in response. Satisfaction. You see, the voice whispered within him. The only way out is through. Daniel looked at his reflection in one of the dark monitors. His eyes were calm, clear, detached. He remembered fear, but it felt distant now. Archived. Another monitor flickered. Room 317. Empty. Waiting. A new bracelet printed. Patient 341. The lights in the chamber dimmed. The hum settled into steady rhythm. Daniel stood at the center of the control wing. Not as a prisoner. Not as a victim. But as a component. And far above, in a quiet hospital room bathed in pale fluorescence, a new patient opened their eyes. The intercom crackled softly. Welcome back.
Closing chapter.
Hospitals are built to heal. They are places we trust with our bodies, our memories, our fear. But what if healing was never the intention? What if the white walls, the soft announcements, the promise of discharge were only methods of containment? Tonight you followed a man who thought he was trapped until he discovered he was being integrated. Not killed, not cured, repurposed. The hospital didn't malfunction, it adapted, it expanded, it absorbed. And maybe the scariest truth is this: the doors were never locked, he simply stopped wanting to leave. So ask yourself, if the intercom called your name, would you resist? Or would you comply? If this story unsettled you, stay with us, because the next admission might be yours.